bit tricky, this, I think, for Marcus Rashford and for Ruben Amorim now, Dan, because Rashford's come out and said, look, I think basically the race is run here, ready for this new challenge, as he said to Henry Winter. And then Amorim's kind of said, well, no, come on, he's still important to us. He's still an important player. He's still a player that has a lot of talent. Where does this relationship now go? Does Amorim continue to play him, despite the fact that he said that he wants to go? How do you think the Man United manager should deal with it?
I think Amorim's been pretty good at diffusing things so far, showing a good side of his man management in the way he handled the Garnacho and Rashford situation last weekend. I thought he kind of has showed them who's boss, but has then said they'll be back in the squad next week. So I think he handled that well, but also made a statement and showed he's the boss. So I think that was good. With this one, he's obviously trying to dress it up a certain way. I'm not sure it can be dressed up in that way. Rashford's comments. It's going to be interesting to see the Manchester United fans' reaction to this at games, whether they booed. Do you remember when Wayne Rooney said he wanted to leave and he got abused for it for
Do you think they will? Afterwards? Do you think they will?
I don't know. I really don't know. Obviously, it was not a malicious interview. It was, he's not gone in and slagged the club off. But
in fact, it was almost the opposite, really, wasn't it? He was saying, you never have any bad feeling from me towards this club. They've done so much for me.
The whole timing is a bit strange because I don't see a world in which he goes anywhere in January, because I think January will be quite quiet again because of PSR, and nobody's going to have a massive amount of money to pull Rashford away that Manchester United would want in terms of fee. Loan, no one's going to pay his wages. He's on
this is the
huge
thing.
salary.
I mean, even if we're talking about the summer, though, Dan, as well. I mean, which club?
There's a bit more
signing?
flexibility, isn't there, in the summer?
There is. But what I'm saying is, I mean, he is either going to have to take a huge pay cut here, or seriously assess his options. I mean, the only place really I can think that is going to take him on with his wages, let's be honest, is Saudi Arabia. Because
he's too young, isn't he?
And I agree with that. And maybe him as a player, that's not an option that he wants to go for. He still wants to achieve things in the game, and I admire that, of course. But surely, if he's looking at whether it's another club in the Premier League or a club abroad, he is going to have to take this wage cut, because Manchester United, let's be honest, given the performances they've had back from him, have been overpaying him, at least for the last couple of seasons. And if he wants a future at that kind of level, which club do you think will go in for him, though? What kind of level are we talking?
Terrible radio from me, but I genuinely don't know. I genuinely
it's never
can't.
Terrible radio from you, Dan.
English clubs wise, Premier League clubs wise, what's the level here? You can't imagine Manchester City and Arsenal would be in for him.
Do you know why as well? I think when you look at Arsenal, it is a bit of a different case. But you look at that Raheem Sterling situation where they've taken a chance on him, taking him from Chelsea, where this guy's bang out of form, and it hasn't worked at all. And everyone kind of thought, Arteta might be able to get a song out of him. It just hasn't worked at all, and maybe they'll learn from that with this situation, unless Arteta thinks. I mean, the other thing with Arsenal is that he loves Premier League proven. Now, obviously, recent seasons, as we've said, it's not been the best at all for Marcus Rashford, but he has shown that he can do it in seasons gone by. He has shown that he's got the talent.
I just think there's quite simply nowhere for Marcus Rashford to go, either now or in the summer, really, domestically. I don't think there's anywhere for him to go. I think even teams like Villa, Newcastle, Spurs, they're not going to pay that salary. They're not going to probably pay the kind of fee that Manchester United would want. I think the timing of this interview is quite weird. Obviously, it's come off the back of the issue at the weekend with him being dropped from the squad. But even the way it's been done, on Henry Winter's Twitter, basically, that interview, that's how it was announced, wasn't it, on Henry Winter's Twitter. I just find the whole episode a little bit strange to come out and say those things mid-season in a time when Manchester United, I mean, he's trying to look at every player at the moment, Amorim. There's every chance Rashford could play a lot of games and kind of cement himself in the team. Maybe Rashford's reading between the lines a little bit of being left out of the squad, looking at the formation and the setup of Amorim and thinking, I don't think there's a natural place for me
and
here.
Let's be fair, there isn't really.
No.
Because of the way he plays, you're either having to play him as a wing-back, you're having to play him through the middle, which obviously he's even tried early on, or in this number 10 kind of role. And actually Rashford talks about that in the interview when he kind of says, look, I'm trying to learn it, but it doesn't suit my natural game. So in that sense, there's a shred of sympathy there for him in terms of new manager coming in, but it doesn't feel like he even looks like part of the plans in terms of the way this new manager plays.
Yeah, he got off to a flying start, didn't he, playing centre forward in the first game, scored after a couple of minutes in that game, and has scored goals since then as well. I think it's a shame, because I think this manager could be good for Manchester United, and I think he could be good for Rashford, but the system kind of hamstrings Rashford a little bit. I think he's become... Look, I'm not saying he's been brilliant for Manchester United, because the last couple of years he quite simply hasn't, but his record the season before was pretty good. He scored a lot of goals that season. He has become a scapegoat. There's no getting away from that. He's become a scapegoat for a lot of what's wrong at Manchester United, and there's been a lot wrong at Manchester United, and Rashford's not in control of that. Nobody has really played well for Manchester United over the last couple of years. It's just when you're a local boy, you're on a massive wage, you're a forward player, you come under scrutiny. But I
think
he's
there's
been
times
unfair.
where he hasn't helped himself?
Maybe. I think there's been like disciplinary issues have crept in with timekeeping and being on nights out when he shouldn't be, and stuff like that. But he's not the only footballer that does those kind of things. You know, probably happens more often than we think it does, and probably happens more often than it gets reported. But when Marcus Rashford does it, it seems to end up in the press, or it seems to come out. It's just he's only 27. Like I can't believe he's only 27, because it feels like he's been around for so much longer. But at the moment, he's miles off where he needs to be, because a lot of players have usurped him in the England pecking order. He'll have ambitions, and he mentioned that he still wants to play for England, but at the moment that's miles off. But I can't see where he goes from here. Like, if you were to predict the next move, I honestly don't. There's nothing. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. It's so funny as well that you say there that you feel that he's been this scapegoat. I heard the lads talking about this on the sports bar last night, Jamie O'Hara and Jason Cundy, and I thought Cundy made a really interesting point, essentially saying that he thinks that actually Manchester United as a club, over the time that Rashford has been there, are more to blame than Rashford himself. And he made the point that actually since Ferguson left, can we name one Manchester United player who has completely shone, who's been brilliant, who has lit up that club? And I tell you what, it is very, very difficult to do that. Of course, there's been individual seasons, individual moments where that's happened, but in terms of a player with a bit of longevity over that time who has done well, it's very, very hard to pick out. And Cundy also made the point. He kind of said, look, if Rashford had been at Liverpool, let's say, under Jurgen Klopp, when Klopp had come in, are we looking, do you think, Dan, at a completely different player?
If he's at a better coach, I imagine I'd probably getting coached by now, but they haven't been getting coached well for the last few years. I think you would see a different footballer, because we've seen Marcus Rashford can be a sensational operator on his day, and he has had periods of consistency, but he's just been at a club that hasn't been stable for a long, long time now, and your form's gonna suffer when the manager's changing every few seasons. You're buying players that aren't fit for purpose. You've got no footballing philosophy or footballing strategy. Manchester United as an institution and as a football club have just been miles off it, and unfortunately Rashford's become part of that, and his own career stagnated and his own career suffered, and he's become miles off where he should be as well. So I think he's just a symptom of what's gone wrong at Manchester United. He's certainly not the cause. And I think if you gave it a few years, like you say, if he'd been working under a manager like Klopp, or not Pep at the moment, but Pep over the last few years, you'd have just seen a different player, because there is something there. It's just not been able to flourish at Manchester United, but very few players have been able to flourish at Manchester United.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think now that, is there any chance, Dan, that he stays?
Yeah.
Any chance?
Do you think? I've just said, like, you couldn't possibly predict where he would go. I'd make him staying at Manchester United for the next 2-3 years.
Staying and playing, or staying because he has to?
Bit of both. I think there's always going to be a place in the squad for him at Manchester United. It's going to be so hard to get him out on those wages. So hard to get him out on those wages. And what fee would he command?
Would you take him at Villa if they were able to work that out?
Emery is the kind of manager who improves players, but I don't see a natural fit for him in Villa's system either. To be honest, and that's what we're saying now. We're saying a player who's been a big part of Manchester United for the last decade wouldn't fit at Villa, wouldn't fit at Newcastle, would he fit at Spurs? You're looking at maybe down in the next rung of clubs at like West Ham, and I'm not sure he'd, without being disrespectful to West Ham, like lower himself to that level. I've worded that terribly, but do you know what I mean? I think he'd see himself as being better than West Ham. So that leaves him going abroad. But we know, like, clubs abroad don't have the money. Bayern Munich, PSG, maybe they're the only clubs outside of the Premier League that really have any high finance. So it's a terrible time for him to do this interview, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. And when you think about, the Bayern team, Elise, Musiala,
he's not going to
where's
get
he getting into those teams?
How much do you reckon he cost?
Oh, again, it's so tough to say, isn't it? Because I think a lot of that valuation would be based on, you'd have to base it on some of the successes from.
And he's
we're
still
going
27.
back a few seasons now, Dan. We're going back a couple of seasons at least since when Marcus Rashford was at the peak of its powers. To take a punt on a player like that, to be fair, I mean, it won't be good business for Manchester United, but it could lower that price down. So whether clubs see that as a chance to take him on and get him back to his best, it will definitely be a punt, whoever takes it.
I suppose like Sancho's gone to Chelsea and there's like signs of a recovery there.
Yeah,
isn't there? But I don't see Chelsea taking him on.
Well, I mean, they signed every other forward in the world, so maybe.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.